Hey, friends. I've had one of those phases, I think. It's really interesting how the consciousness of parenting, what we're aware of from one day to the next, from 1 week to the next, 1 week to the next. You know, some of the same kinds of epiphanies keep returning, and it's like anything in life. You know, there's a kind of cyclical nature to it. It's cyclical, but because it's evolution, it's not just a merry-go-round, it's actually a kind of upward ascending spiral. We hope it's upwardly ascending. We hope it's not like going down the drain, because that can happen too. But very often when I have a similar insight that I may have had before, it kind of gives me a little boost. It gives me a little sense of, oh, yes, I know this, and now I can apply it even more broadly. So, like, for example, the most recent thing that happened to me was, the most recent insight that came to me was that I had a sense that Annalise, you know, there's so many ways in which, as a parent, you want to feel that your child is learning what they need to learn, getting what they need to get, you know, having their needs met, and also little by little, you know, they start to become human beings, and it's like, what is their personality evolving into? Who are they becoming? And believe me, anybody who's sort of had a young child is undoubtedly aware there are these days where you think, oh no, maybe not whole days, maybe whole days, but certainly episodes of days, episodes within a day, where you go, oh no, is she becoming this? Is he becoming this, right? Is my kid, is there something they're becoming that, you know, that if we saw somebody else's kid, we'd totally judge it. Not that that's ever appropriate behavior or in any way enlightened, but it's hard not to do sometimes. But I think anybody who's had a child knows what I mean. You have a moment where you want to be like, I hope we're on track here, and it's usually around, you know, watching the way a young person wrestles with being social, wrestles with being kind, wrestles with being generous, wrestles with being acknowledging of the presence of other human beings, right? There's so many ways that this kind of development can take place, so that, you know, little things can show up. And what struck me once again through a couple of interactions, some of which were my interactions and some of which were interactions I observed in either Katie and Annalise, or even just a couple, you know, other people who've been around, is there's such a difference between molding and modeling. That's the phrase that came into my head. It felt like a pithy way of summing up the distinction between what I'm calling molding, which is here's what I'm consciously trying to teach my child. Here's what I'm consciously trying to impart, bestow, encourage, whatever. It's my conscious engagement. But all the while that we're molding, and even when we think we aren't molding, we are modeling. And modeling is where it all happens. You know, if something happens and our child gets hurt or gets angry about something, and it's kind of their fault, but we were somehow involved, there's something that in the interaction or an accident or whatever, and what we really want is for our child to be able to take responsibility for that moment. She's trying to go to sleep, if you can't hear. She has a little bit of a cough. You know, if that's what we're trying to encourage, then oftentimes what we'll try to do is we'll try to tell them to take responsibility, or tell them to think about how they might have acted here, what might have produced this outcome. We can do this, you know, kind of roughly or gently, obviously, ideally gently, but in either case, we're trying to tell the child how to feel or how to work with their feelings in a given moment. And especially when it comes to responsibility, this is a big one, because, you know, we all want to feel like our children are becoming responsible people. We all want to feel like they know how to take responsibility. They are capable. They understand what that means. They're inclined to lean in and say, oh, I see I'm having this effect, or whatever it is. And such a vastly more effective way of communicating that than telling them is modeling that. Actually doing that, just in the interaction or the accident or whatever it is, just taking responsibility for our part, literally showing them what, you know, even if this means that in this moment they don't take responsibility, in this moment they blame you, we're still teaching them to take responsibility by doing so, by actually. And it may not result in an immediate integration of that knowledge or information. It does. Most, I would say, probably usually doesn't. But what it does do, but more often than not, actually, funny enough, as soon as the adult takes responsibility, the child has no trouble following and saying, "Oh yeah, I kind of did. You know, I'm sorry, I did this or whatever." You know, they just need to be shown that it's safe to do that. Because on some level, none of us want to be blamed. None of us, all of us want to avoid blame, whether we're actually to blame or whether we're not. None of us like to be wrong. You know, it's not a fun feeling. But we can tell them that it's okay to be wrong. But almost any instance in which and we're trying to communicate that, is an instance in which there's already kind of some sort of hedge, some sort of charge around the event. And probably a much better way of going about it is just to do the thing. Take the blame. Take the responsibility. Model that is safe. It is safe to be wrong. I can be wrong and I'm still here. I can be to blame for this, and I survive the experience of saying to another person, I'm sorry, I'm to blame. Right? That's an experience. You can't mold that into a person. They won't. It doesn't work that way. It's such a such a kind of matter of self-reflective awareness that the only way to kind of imprint it is to show how it's done, right? And it's a difficult trick. If we were teaching them to do an acrobatic flip off of a trapeze, we wouldn't expect them to do it without ever seeing it. We'd expect to show them how that's done before we tell them. You know, words have very limited power to communicate on that level, whether it's in, some crazy physical thing or an emotional thing. Words kind of fail most of the time. But doing it, feeling that feeling, expanding into the space, that works. And maybe I'm saying this as a reminder to myself. Is that possible, Robin? Because there's important molding to be done. Conscious parenting is certainly, there's plenty of molding to do. We do have to be there and offer, kind of guide in a way that puts boundaries and principles and imperatives in play, and we have to manage that. But the far bigger part is the modeling. And whenever molding fails, almost whenever molding fails, modeling would work. That's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.